it's always amazing the gifts that the universe will provide if you're paying attention. And so I was probably driving a little over the speed limit because I was concerned about being late. And there was what's the name of the coffin company? Is it Batesville or something? Batesville. So there's a Batesville tractor trailer rig, and I'm just zooming around, and it says, slow down. Heaven can wait. Which is much preferred over the slogan of another funeral home, which was, it's inevitable, why not now? Just had to share that with you. I like to make myself laugh on the way up. So, a month or so ago, I read a book called Breathing Underwater by the Franciscan monk Richard Rohr. And within that book, he talked about 4 spiritual truths. And what Heather didn't mention is that my regular day job is working at an alcohol and drug treatment center in Nashville called Cumberland Heights. And so his book is in the context of 12-step recovery. And one of the things that I've experienced is going to meetings, going to 12-step meetings, and you hear people say, well, I'm a very grateful recovering alcoholic or person or whatever. And it never made sense. What is there to be grateful about? What Richard Rohr maintains is that the people that have reached gratitude in their lives like that have been able to accept and internalize and begin to live 4 spiritual truths. And the 4 truths are that we suffer to heal. And the second one is that we surrender to win. The third is that we have to die to fully live. And the fourth is that we need to give it away to keep it. None of those make sense in the context of our culture. They contradict each other. And I shared that last time I was here, and I'd like to go through each one of these spiritual truths in my next visits here. And today, what I want to talk about is this idea that suffering ultimately can lead to healing. In fact, it seems like that's the way we heal. And so the question is, why do we have to suffer to heal? And I was thinking about this talk, what came to mind first were the Buddhist 4 Noble Truths. That all of life is suffering. It's the price of admission we pay. So life is suffering, but our suffering is caused by all of our attachments, meaning the way I think about things and the way things should be in my belief system. The third noble truth is if I can let go of my attachments, I can diminish my suffering. And the way to learn how to let go of my attachments is the Eightfold Path, which, paraphrasing, is about right thought and right action and right employment and right attitude, right reflection, right relationships. So the Buddhists tell us, yes, life is suffering, but it need not be so intense if we change a little bit and begin to view things in a different light. But my experience has been, well, I'm not paying attention until the pain gets so bad, I decide I've got to do something. And Barry and I were talking about this yesterday. It's kind of like when I go to the dentist, and the dentist is in there filling around, and he says, you know, you've got a filling that we probably need to do some work on. It's going to get bad if we don't. Why don't you make an appointment, come back and work on it? And I'm thinking, no. I don't want to come back anytime soon because I have to pay you 1 month's mortgage every time I go, right? So I think I can delay it. Besides, it doesn't hurt me right then. And then maybe some months go by, and I can feel it. There's not anything bad in that, so I don't do anything about it. You know where this is going. Until that point where it's like, it's just throbbing, and now I'm going to do something about it. My suffering, and only my suffering, will get me me to the point that I'm ready to be healed. Now that's kind of a practical thing to think about, just like that kind of pain. But it also, I think, kind of is a good way to think about the other pain we experience in our life. Okay? Maybe I'm at a job that I know deep down isn't really a good fit for me, and I can kind of justify why I need to be there. I need the money, I need the security, I'm doing all those things. But it slowly begins to build. Right? And I get to the point where, I dread going. I don't like anybody there. They're all dumber than a lead fence. They have nothing to do with me. I'm just showing up and I'm getting my paycheck. And without really knowing it, I am suffering. And I'm bringing that suffering to other people. Because I was afraid to really sit with it and recognize what was happening and do something about it. So instead, I start slacking at work, or I start having an attitude with other people, and I end up really angry, maybe to the point that I storm out and quit one day, or my boss goes, we've had a couple meetings, this just isn't working out, and I let go. And now I'm in real pain. And I have to sit back and think, wait a second, how did I get here? It was because I was unwilling to do something along the way to adjust it because I hadn't suffered enough. Are you feeling that? Yeah, I think a lot of us do. We do it in relationships. We do it with family relationships. We do it with our health. We do it in friendship relationships. It's like I will just continue on and continue on and continue on until the pain becomes so great, I will do something about it. It's like a friend of mine said, I am not going to change a thing about what I'm doing until I have painted myself into the corner. I'm in extreme pain and I have no other options. Then and only then will I entertain the idea of approaching the situation a little differently. So I think there's something about the human condition that requires us to get to a certain level of suffering before we can begin to heal. And I think about certain relationships that are long-term relationships that we endured, and we try to make work, and we try to make work, and we try to make work, and we finally get to a place where it's just not working because of the pain the relationship is causing. I decide to do something different. And at that point, if I'm willing and able, I may learn something from that. And the next time I'm in the same situation, I've healed a little bit, and it's not going to be the same way. I may not stay in it as long, or I may see the signs earlier. Now, Richard Rohr talks about it this way. He said, one of the reasons that we hang on so long in our suffering is because we're operating in the delusion that we're in control. That we can somehow control the exterior aspects of our lives, the external parts of our lives, in a way that will somehow make our internal feel okay. And it just doesn't work that way. His model is this, and I've shared this before. He says, we go from order, which is the new relationship, the new job, the new whatever, and, it's going along. We have certain expectations. We haven't hit the wall yet with it. It hasn't gotten complicated yet. So we're in order. But ultimately, because I think it's going to stay in order and everything's going to be the way I want it, ultimately, I begin to run up against the fact that I can't control everything, and I suddenly shift into disorder, and it feels chaotic. And the more chaotic it feels, the more out of control it feels, the more control I try to exert, and the more painful it becomes for whoever or whatever I'm trying to control. So I move from order into disorder. And that's where my suffering is. Now, a lot of us step back and go, I can't do this anymore. This isn't going to work. So I let that go, and I try to move back into order. And all that means is I'm just preparing myself for disorder again at some point in the same way. And what Richard Rohr talks about is, if I'm in order and I get into disorder, if I can step back and learn from my suffering and heal some, I move from order to disorder into reorder. And I now have more tools. I've healed some, and I can be more prepared to deal with what I've been suffering through and avoid it in the future, or deal better with what I've been struggling with. We have to suffer to heal. Because usually I'm not going to change until the pain of where I am is greater than the pain that I perceive out there. And once this gets so painful, I'm willing to move through this order and go into this new place of reorder. And almost everybody I know that's been through this transition from order to disorder to reorder come out on the other side, and we're better for it. We're happier. We're stronger. We're healthier. But we wouldn't have gotten there if we hadn't gone through it. I think it's an interesting idea if we combine these two things. And we think about the Buddhists who say that life is suffering. And we think about Richard Rohr saying that we need to suffer to heal. And we kind of blend those things and say we have to live to heal. Because what is our life other than a series of tests, disappointments, and joy, expectations, some are met and some aren't. But we live and we die and we grow and we fail and we succeed, and all these things that take place in our lives, in essence, prepare us for the next day. And as we kind of go through the suffering of life and the healing of life and the suffering of life and the healing of life, we get to a place where it begins to feel a little different. It begins to feel a little healthier and easier. And when we meet something that's caused us suffering in the past, we look at it and go, oh yeah, I remember this. I've been here before. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. So that's, I guess, the message today. That I think the Buddhists are right. If we think that we live without going through periods of suffering, great elation, but also suffering and discouragement, then we really delude ourselves into thinking we understand what life is about. We are hardwired for struggle. We are hardwired to endure pain. And we're hardwired to sit back and reflect and learn about it and move forward. But my experience is I stay in the pain longer if I try to figure it out myself. And that is the beauty of being in community. I get that healing. I overcome my suffering when I share it with another person. They're able to see me and reflect back for me to get a better understanding of what I'm going through. So yes, life is suffering. Yay! Where would we be without it? The question becomes, how do I experience it? Because one of the other things that Richard Rohr says in the final analysis is that it's only until we've suffered enough that we become willing to kind of let go of the reins a little and believe that there's something bigger at work around us. You can call it whatever you want. But that there is something bigger than me. Ultimately, it's like the story that we read to the children this morning. The answer is in my hands. The answer is in my hands. I have a choice to try to keep going the way I've always gone, ride that horse right off the cliff, or recognize I can let go, surrender a little bit to the fact that life is so much bigger, and that at any given point, I dare say, I really don't know what's happening in my life. Because what could feel, I'm going to ask you this, how many people have been in a situation where you're fighting something. You don't want it to happen, you don't want it to happen, you don't want it to happen, and it happens, and it's awful, and then 6 months later you go, God, thank God that happened. Have you ever had that experience? Raise your hand. Okay? Look around the room. This is the nature of life. And at the time, I think it's a horrible thing. Until I get some time to look back and realize what a gift it was. And so that's another part of this, that if I just let go of my judgments of what's happening to me at any given time, I can diminish my suffering. So, I guess I'll conclude by saying, suffer on. Heal on.